Thank you. Thank you, dear friends of the School of Materialistic Research. Dear colleague, thank you for being there today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to be with you again. I'd like to express my sincere gratitude for you, for your invitation, of course, and for your interest in my research and writing. I have to say also, and you will understand me, I hope, that I'm truly sorry that I cannot be here with you in person as I had wished. I would especially like, in this situation, to thank Professor Katerina Kolosova and also Professor Miglena Nikolchina, who supported and developed my work for years. And I'm confident that their presence here with you will facilitate a meaningful and enriching exchange, despite the advantages, but also the challenges posed by the digital medium that I am obliged to follow today instead of being with you. So I propose to structure my two talks, today's and tomorrow's, as follows. Today, I will begin by summarizing my psychoanalytic research on feminine identity, which I argue is shaped by what I call a bifacial Oedipus, or Oedipal diet, as it mostly translated in English. An Oedipal diet that leads to a specific ethics of feminine. Based on these considerations, I will try to defend my hyperbolic concept that some of you already know of what I call the feminine genius by addressing the question, is there a feminine genius? We'll try to do all those things today. And if we don't have enough time, I'll try to keep again this second aspect, is there a feminine genius, for tomorrow. And tomorrow I will discuss more essentially and more longly my approach to the works of three important female figures. It will be more concrete lecture that will give a particular aspect, more realistic maybe, to my theoretical explanations. These three figures are Hannah Arendt, Melanie Klein, and the writer Colette. And I will aim to identify and explore the common characteristics through their singular freedom and singular contributions. With that, let's begin with what I call a prelude to an ethics of the feminine. In the accelerated anthropological transformation of the beginning of this third millennium, the women are at once an emerging force on the same level with upheavals and values and identities, and a reducible otherness, force and otherness. Otherness, I mean object of desire, fear and envy, of oppression and exploitation, of abuse and exclusion. Can psychoanalysis make itself heard? This is my epistemological question that I'll try to raise during my theoretical explanation. Can psychoanalysis make itself heard in this anthropological transformation and the place of women in it? Must it take itself heard? This will be my ethical question, or the ethical aspect of my lesson. In this new phase of civilization and its discontent, and we have in the German expression of Freud, civilisation et son malaise, le malaise de la civilisation, unbehaben of the civilization. The feminine, so, seems to be, let me say for the beginning, something in metaphorical terms. The feminine seems to me to be like a boson of the unconscious, as we have a Higgs boson in physics. Why this metaphor? Because the feminine is as radical as it is ingraspable, a component of our psychosexual identities, as is this particle boson of the physics. And though no longer an enigma, as feminine was for Freud, this vector relating the soma and the psyche, which is in my mind the feminine, is no less an overflow of existential and social actings, as attested nowadays by the Me Too social movement and the awareness campaign against sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and rape culture. Let's begin with some historic considerations. For the 2,500 years that ethics had existed, the feminine has been rejected from the sphere of ethics. It is not a subject, women are not the subject of ethics. At most, the feminine is an object, if that. Psychoanalysis has broken this exclusion of the feminine by way of a new ethics that puts it bracket, which is to say suspends judgment. We put in brackets, we suspend the judgment, morality, and the world, so as to better question them by giving itself, this questioning, a direction. It's not a questioning without any purpose or without any assignment. We have given a direction to this question in psychoanalysis, and this direction is formulated by Freud, where id was, there ego shall be. And we have two opposing principles that give some order to our questions. The opposing principles are the pleasure principle and the reality principle. Is inscribed in this format, in this suspense, transference, psychoanalytic transference, reveals in the unconscious a drive-based sexuality, bisexual, pulsionnel, drive-based sexuality, that far from expelling the organic, biological, and anatomic, is denatured because it is disconnected from the organic instinctual by a primary repression. This is a foundation that some people don't understand and don't stress and don't consider even in the psychoanalytical approach of the human psyche. It is based on sexuality, but this sexuality is denatured by the primary repression. An original disjunction constitutes the speaking being as a split subject, a splitting or fading, Spaltung, Refund, in German, in French, to which the analyst lends an ear, and it is which breaks into normative morality. Feminine fertility and eroticism seem to manifest and disclose this disjunction, and as a result, become the target of desire and envy, to possess, to master, to destroy as well, for the benefit of a masculine domination observed in all societies. The castration complex only finds its full meaning if it is understood for both sexes as a traumatic displacement of the trauma of sexual difference, which resonates deeply with the original split fading. So we have to consider the split and the fading as the first stage of the speaking subject, and then different traumas, and then eventually the castration complex. But the process of this disjunction is beginning with the denatured drive-based sexuality, the presence of sexual, pulsional tribes, and meaning, sense and sensation. When discontent erupts in the Freudian book of Malaise dans la civilisation, which is from 31, Freud assigned psychoanalysis in two essays on the feminine. Also, some of these works are very well known, even by Freudians that work today, without taking into consideration the whole history of the construction of Freud theoretical positions. Two texts about feminine, the one from 1931, the other from 1933, in which he expresses and assigns a new task to the psychoanalysis that consists on the psychoetymological, epistemological level in finding the connection, he says, between the theory of bisexuality and the theory of drives, a task which restructures psychoanalysis and dedicated us for the development of comprehension of femininity on the basis of this bisexuality. This last Freud thereby prefigures some aspects of gender theories. A polyphonic psychic bisexuality, more accentuated in women, says Freud, appears in this Freud, provided to be double for each sex. Thus, we have bisexuality of men, bisexuality of women. Thus, the party is made for at least only to be modulated in the end to a singular or unique. The freedom risked by this choice, by this ethic, is frightening and jubilatory. There remains an enigmatic question that Freud asked Marie Bonaparte. What does woman want? Was will das Weib? He wonders not about desire, which is the Wunsch, but want, wollen. This wants, this pillar of choice is a question posed on the ethical life of women. The elusive what want refers to the relationship of the feminine to the ideals of life and to life itself, inseparable from cultural ideas, desire, underlying ideals. Was Freud looking to refound ethics through the feminine? The biopolitics of modernity force this question on us now more than ever. The feminine, understood in this way and conveyed by the Freudian discovery of the unconscious, is one, if not the factor of this disquieting opening due to its own transformability. The feminine is transformative, neither innate nor acquired, but the tireless conquest of these two phases of the unfinished Oedipus, the vivacity of the feminine either diversifies or it succumbs, because of its complexity, to the trials of merciless socio-historical reality. A confession before we continue. Like you, I hear the feminine of woman I will not deal with the feminine of men today. I hear this feminine in listening to my patients, in reading feminine works, in taking in talking, taking them with you today, and trying in our conversation to understand our questions and our desire to push me to go closer to your own experience of your femininity. And often, perhaps like you, I'm tired of these disruptive mysteries, these cosmetics of all sorts. They are very sincere, but they are also some etiquettes in order to express anxiety. So, what degree is the feminine in me, in you? No one knows, but the feminine, like I embody in my way, is not an ideological artifact. I participate in its advent, always to come, always to be transformed, always to continue. Simone de Beauvoir famously wrote, "On ne naît pas femme, on le devient." We are not born, but rather become women. Please hear to this and think about this, become women. I would say rather, we are biologically born female, but I, psychological, conscious and conscious, become or not feminine. This becoming will be the kernel point of my demonstration today. Let me present now some psychoanalytic remarks about what I'll call transformative feminine in this general schema of the denatured sexuality, splitting and transformation of our way of living through questioning. How the feminine is positioned as a transformative feminine in this already moving identity that Freud gives us in order to think the coming centuries and disruptive schemas of our planet. The transformative feminine is formed in the oedipal diet, the primary Oedipus and the secondary Oedipus, and in maternal reliance. Let me explain these notions and this experience. I call primary Oedipus the archaic period that goes from birth to the phallic phase until age 3 to 6. Far from the idyllic Mino-Mycenian period, Freud focused to something that you are in connection maybe when you are in Greece, this pre-existing before classical Greece Mino-Mycenian society with maternal social arrangements. This Mino-Mycenian is supposed idealistically like a peaceful for women era. From this idyllic peaceful era and the serenity of being before doing, which we found also in the writing of Winnicott. What is characteristic from this primary Oedipus in my mind is close to what Melanie Klein calls the projective identification. Projective identification, which is fostered by mother-daughter resemblance and by the projection of maternal narcissism and depression on the girl. An interactive subjectivity is established by the early working out of an identificatory and introjective-projective bond with the loving and intrusive pre-object that is the mother. And so far as she, the mother, incorporates also the feminine and then relays the father's desire. By introjection of this relationship to the mother, this sameness with the mother. The excited cavity of the inner body of the baby, female baby, the excited cavity of the inner body turned is into an internal representance of the external. It's not only physical experience, but it is a representation, is a psychization of the external. So the introjection of the excited same cavity, like the mother's, the inner body, turns into internal representation of the external, and therefore establishes the psyche of the little girl as an altered sameness, as an integrated otherness. We are the same, but we are other. This is the experience of the sameness and the otherness in the very early ages of the feminine construction. A self outside the outside of oneness in the self. This psychosexuality of interdependence is encoded in the sensorial flow, gestures, images, and echolalia, the catexis of prelinguistic vocalizations, intensities, frequencies, and rhythms, which I call a semiotic receptacle. The Greek name would be the chora, which we find in Plato's Timaeus. The semiotic receptacle, because those is meaningful representations that are pre-linguistic, and already have sense without having meaning. This latter, the meaning, developing with the acquisition of the symbolic rules, which is the phonetic grammar, and which is the phonetics, the grammar, and the logic. So this splitting of the psychosexuality is represented by the two versions of communication mean, the chora, which is semiotic, with rhythms, frequencies, intensities, gestures, and symbolic, which is language itself, with phonetics, grammar, and logic. The co-presence of sames, mother, daughter, and meticulous sensorial adjustment of their harmonies, disharmonies, runs through utilitarian care and is filtered into the feminine realm of the sublimated senses that is beauty. We have so in this particular bi-sided relationship between mother and daughter, same and others, we have two experiences that characterize the femininity from the beginning: the utilitarian care, I care for you, you care for me, and accompanied by a sublimated sense of the care, as I call the beauty. It is a beauty that coexists with the desire to expel expulsion. You see how I don't idealize this beauty, but I make it exist on the same level and as a double of the expulsion. The first pre-symbolic gesture are colored by rejection, attraction and expulsion, fascination and disgust, neither subject nor object. This is abjection, as ancient, as permanent as is the care and beauty. Abjection is more violent between mother and daughter than between mother and idolized son. And to this, the adolescence, that hatred of the castrated woman, is added to this experience. The adolescent girl hates the castrated woman, which is the mother, the object of the paternal penis. It is a hatred without oresterial remorse, contrary to parricide, where the patricide arouses remorse in the male figure in the son. The matricide of the daughter remains a hazy unconscious complex without remorse, but a continuous background noise that will accompany her throughout her endless settling of scores with her mother and her representatives. Unthought and unthinkable, matricide dispossesses her of herself. This is the first Oedipus. We see that it doesn't exist in the male presentation of Oedipus. What about the second Oedipus for the girl? Two moments mark the positioning of the secondary Oedipal phase. The phallic stage becomes the central organizer of the co-presence of sexuality and thought in both sexes. It is a phallic kairos in the Greek sense of the mythic encounter, the kairos, encounter and or a fateful severing. An equivalence emerges between, on the one hand, the pleasure of the phallic organ, visible and valued in androcentric society, and on the other hand, the access to language, the function of speech and thought. We can notice this simultaneity between the phallic stage, appreciation and the presence of the phallic kairos as the encounter with the penis, and the access to language, the function of speech and thought. And the entry into the secondary Oedipal phase, where the father replaces the mother as the aim of desire, adjoins a decisive moment in the construction of feminine subjectivity. This decisive moment is the cathexis, the German word for this experience is Besetzung, the cathexis of what Freud calls the father of individual prehistory. I cathex, the father of the individual prehistory, which represent a law of society, the language, the speech and thought. But not only this, the father of the Oedipus complex, which is usually considered and represented in Freudian thinking, is a secondary position before which it exists in the Freudian texts, and particularly in the book from 1923, The Ego and the Id, a cathexis to the father of the individual prehistory, with the characteristics of both parents, male and female. I insist on this bisexuality, father and mother, of this paternal, early paternal figure that permeates this originally thirdness in the origin of the ego ideal. And I maintain that the mother part of this imaginary father can only promote the transition of the feminine primary Oedipus to the secondary Oedipus. The girl is henceforth quick to idealize and acquire the values and logics of this bivalent thirdness, connecting it with her sensorial and her clitoral excitability, despite remaining inconsolably indebted to the maternal sameness intimacy of the primary Oedipus. Women's fabulous social adaptability, an obstinate scar, covers this constitutive dissociation that expresses itself as foreign to the phallic order. I'd like to keep your attention to this situation, how the second Oedipus persists as a catexis. I believe in this thirdness that my father represents for me. He's not already the Oedipus in the sense of law, taboo, or different kind of interdictions. It is a loving father, but I belong to the first Oedipus, to the mother relationship of sameness and otherness. And in this sense, I remain foreign in the phallic situation of the society order. On the one hand, there is an intense catexis in the underlying bound and authority, a psychosexual movement that reveals itself in the need to do belief, in the imaginary father, in the maternal envelope. But on the other hand, this belief, disparaged by sexism and swallowed up by the primary Oedipus, as well as every identity, is experienced in the registers of the illusory. It is a game. I am in it, but I am pretending. It is not true. It is something artificial. Je suis toujours étrangère au langage, à la loi, à l'ordre social. Deluded. The feminine is equally disillusioned, disappointed, with a radical disappointment more intractable than melancholy, because the subject is not confronted with the nonsense of being, but with the absence of being. Unless she purifies her primary Oedipus to revolt and to fulfillness, or through the eternal irony of the community, as Hegel put it, or through the insatiable curiosity and of the researcher, the feminine remains absent in the social order, in an absence that is more disappointed than melancholy. But this more disappointed can leave us also to insatiable curiosity and revolting irony against the rules of the community. The feminine énamoration, as you say more easily in French, and I will take the translation of Lacanian énamoration, which will be hate-loving. The feminine hate-loving of the phallus does not come to an end, however. The feminine knows now to combat the maternal hold of the primary Oedipus, as well as the father of the superego of the secondary Oedipus. But the preserve of intimacy, which flees itself, also facilitate the intrapsychic contact between the feminine and the death drive. So being foreigner to the society is not only something that is disturbing or lacking of force and specificity or singularity. It opens the realm of the death drive, and here we will have some surprises that could be dreadful, but also very exciting. Before and without externalizing its sadism, the original masochism appears in the feminine, which is only one melancholic version of the state of emergency in life, a quality of vital energy that is always already psychosomatic, given this destructiveness that scouts the living, naturally, so to speak, needs feminine life. Think here of little Zygmunt watching on his mother needs knuddles. I will remember this perception of Freud about the intimacy between the feminine and the dead, when he represents his mother that needs knuddles, and saying that it is a way to need death in the life itself. Thus, from primary Oedipus to secondary Oedipus, the transformative feminine is a multiverse, to borrow again one metaphor from contemporary astrophysics, that the amorous encounter awakens and reconstructs. The amorous encounter between two lovers, be they from one same sex or two sexes, these four aspects of our bisexuality, two for the anatomic feminine, two for the anatomic masculine, become in their adjustments a multiverse. Unless this multi-layered structure is compressed in frigidity and exploded in hysterical attract or conversion, a cascade of co-present sensoriality, mnesic traces, fantasies, and ideals sweep the pleasure of organs into feminine jouissance. All my skin has a soul, writes Colette. Let me add, all my flesh has a soul. Detotalized completeness and eclipse of the self, absolute vitality, and crossed mortalities of the two partners, the feminine is in best position in this multiverse because of this double organization. Now, what is the place of reliance, the motherhood, in these constructions of femininity? The maternal eroticism, which I call reliance, is another component of the transformative feminine. Originally, a biopsychic experience, reliance, both for man and woman, may be refused as such or transposed into the professions of education and care or in various social commitments. So it's not only a biological experience that implies women anatomically, it's a psychological experience which can be accomplished, transposed in the professions of education and care. Men can be in a position of reliance, care, but also various social commitment. Before it becomes a holding environment from which the creation of psychic bonds which will detach, maternal eroticism is a state of emergence in life, not des Lebens, is the expression of Heidegger that Lacan borrowed. A state of emergence in life, a quality of vital energy, what is always already psychosomatic and gives and receives to be at the level required to conserve life, to be at the level required to conserve life, state of emergency in life. This is the psychic, psychosexual level of the emergency of not only this life, but what is reliance, the link, the grasping between the same and the other. But while the female lover's libido is dominated by the satisfaction of drives, maternal eroticism deploys its libidinal thrust as tenderness. Beyond expulsion, abjection, and separation, tenderness is the basic affect of reliance. It's, as already stressed, between child and parents, but lovers too, and what underlies the sexual excitation there is the affect of tenderness. Two factors, internal to maternal intersubjectivity, promote this metabolism of destructive passion into reliant dispassionate. The woman's experience an rearranged Oedipal diet in the new parental couple and the maternal relationship to language. A veritable cycle is built on these two pillars in the child's acquisition of language. Humor included, this cycle is similar to the witticism. How to understand, how to give my excitation, my tenderness into language. I have a sort of humor, maybe seducing, disappointing my child, and then pushing him or her to be more creative. So this reliance, which is a transformation of primary and secondary Oedipus in becoming parent, is something that highlights separation and transitionality with Winnicott and maternal madness with Andre Green. I believe it important to insist now on this specific eroticism that maintains the emergency in life to the limits of life. And this particularity in the experience of maternity, but also it's a part of maternity in men, I call it a reliance. A spiral and rebounding time follows. Maternal time is beginning and beginning again. Women want to be free to decide where or not to be mothers today. Some of them eagerly turn to assisted motherhoods, without prejudice. It is because the presubjective aspect of feminine eroticism familiarizes them with this dispossession of the self that modern science imposes on us, down to our own intimate depths. At the same time, the transitive feminine is not free of dogmas and norms, but can be able to modulate them into dynamic concepts, and joins the unstable ethic that points to psychoanalysis itself. Now, we are more close to the end of my first topic for today, but I'll enlarge it by speaking about the metamorphosis of parenthood that this conception of femininity imposes to us. Understood thusly, I invite you to consider that the feminine as a detotalized open structure participates in the current overcoming and legitimation of sex and gendered identities in their singular, unique, and shareable future. The third millennium will be the epoch of individual, which is to say singular opportunities, or it will not if it allows itself to be swallowed up in banalized similarity and likes by the transhumanist automation that is in the midst of establishing the binary domination of the haves over have-nots. The trauma of sexual difference, which Freud continued to contemplate up to his last work, Outline, published in 3940, gets covered over if it does not appear in the multiplication of genders that call for passionate, subversive confrontations. This is something new, and we all considered how we belong to our biological, Freudian, but also gender identities. Yet, the liberating reach of gender destabilizes the psychic sex itself and reveals traumatic zones of subjectivity where this primordial bond to life, that is sexuation, tends to fissure. Without succumbing to the split, but brushing against it, castration anxiety and emptiness anxiety, as well as the phallic parade, can create symptoms that, far from eroticizing the feminine, disunite, disensemble the subject and force it to withdraw from the other and from bonds, or even condemn it to that dreadful giddiness of being which seeks to change bodies by hormonal and genetic means in trans sexuality. These are social events that achieve our ideals, trans identifications, and also answers to the death drive, asking for fullness until death from living here out the limits. The analyst, be they man or woman, is to brought to recreate the feminine in the sense of transformability and reliance through his and her listening, and to accompany these symptoms, trans and gender, of this big otherness, être autrement, and leave them, guide them, help them, create with them their own creativity. This is what Freud is suggesting as a testimony for us. These observations lead me to a subject that is as normative as it is burning issue. What about heterosexuality in this conception of identities as transformative, which is my topic today? There, I'll quote maybe Lacan's definition of heterosexuality. He speaks about heterosexual comedy and will say, where do we stand in regard to the heterosexual comedy, to borrow a phrase from Lacan, grim humor? Heterosexuality is no longer seen as the surest and only means of giving life and guaranteeing future generations. But whether the variance of heterosexual norm in each individual's sexualities and the acceptance or rejection of various composed couples, the marriage, the mirage of the marriage, which is a mirage of the primal seed, remains the original fantasy that structures the unconscious of each individual. The heterosexual couple is fragile because women's liberation accentuates the singular feminine of mothers and female lovers and disturbs men who feel with them a danger of homosexuality, says Colette, either masculine or feminine, unless that is danger or a hope. We search in vain to find where humanist values have gone. But what if the heterosexual couple and its family were the focus rather than the value, which show itself in the concern for alleviating solitude, extending and transmitting our species? Reproductive biotechnology and same-sex marriage don't change any of this. Our fantasy unconsciously converge on this archaic legacy of parenthood. The couple, enigmatic, scandalous, detestable, and therefore desirable. Heterosexuality is and will continue to be the problem. From that point on, beginning from and with the singular transformative feminine, the metamorphosis of parenthood, which psychoanalysis is preparing to accompany, are and shall be infinite. And I will ask you to maintain from my meditation today this infinite invitation of philosophers, social workers, and psychoanalysts that you are to accompany and sustain the transferability of the identities and their coexistence with transformative feminine identity in each of the biological sexes as an infinite purpose. Allow me to finish by the quote from French writer Colette, about who we shall speak next time. She wrote in the last century, "Rebirth has never been beyond my power." She was one of those transformative feminine geniuses whose work revitalize us. May that phrase stay with you today. Thank you very much.